My name is Julian Ward, and this is the house she walked out of. The morning Camille left, I didn't hear the front door close. I heard the silence that followed it. It was the kind of silence that doesn't just fill a room, it sinks into your bones. The kind that tells you something's gone before you even go looking. I was in the kitchen, brewing coffee like I did every morning. Same beans, same mug, same slow, thoughtful stir of the sugar she never used. I remember turning around with the second mug in my hand, expecting her to come down the stairs in that robe she used to say was too soft to ever replace. But nothing. No footsteps. No voice. Just the ticking of the wall clock above the spice rack and the quiet hum of Betrayal. I walked upstairs slowly, like maybe moving slow would somehow change the outcome. Our bedroom door was wide open. Her side of the closet empty. Every hanger on her side swung gently, like even they were trying to process what just happened. The jewelry stand? Cleared out. The framed photo of us at graduation, missing. The scent of her perfume still lingered in the air like a ghost. I sat on the edge of the bed. My hands were steady, but my mind raced. No note. No message. Nothing but a folded receipt on the dresser from some upscale lounge in Midtown, dated last night. I didn't recognize the name of the place, but I knew she wasn't there alone. Camille didn't go anywhere just to unwind. She wasn't wired that way. We'd met in college. She was bold, magnetic, alive in ways I envied. I was the quiet one, the guy who kept his headphones in even when the battery was dead just to avoid small talk. She crashed into my life like sunlight through a dusty window, and I let her in because for once, someone made the silence feel full instead of empty. That was the version of her I married. That's the version I tried to hold on to even as the cracks began to form. But love doesn't always shout before it breaks. Sometimes it fades, slips away in sharp remarks and long pauses at dinner tables. She'd started making comments, offhand ones at first, about Carter's new house, about Vanessa's bracelet, about the Benz someone's husband leased just to show off. You could be doing more, you know, she'd say, swirling wine she didn't even enjoy. You're smart, Julian. Why not push harder? What she didn't know, what I never told her, was that I had money, not small change, generational wealth. My mother, Dr. Eloise Ward, built W Global Systems from the ground up. Tech empire. Silent giant. She taught me the value of discretion early. Power stays quiet, she'd say. Flaunt it, and you invite bloodsuckers. So I didn't flaunt. I lived simply. I worked freelance IT gigs, choosing peace over performance. We rented a nice but modest townhouse, drove sensible cars, took practical vacations. I didn't drop names. I didn't pull strings. And Camille? She loved me for a while, until she didn't. I never imagined she'd leave me for someone like Ronan Graves. I'd heard of him in tech circles, overhyped investor with a taste for luxury and a face built for glossy magazines. He was flashy in all the ways I avoided being. Loud, rich, and careless. And apparently that was enough. Enough for her to pack her life into 2 suitcases and vanish without a goodbye. I sat in the kitchen that night with both mugs of coffee, hers untouched, mine cold. I stared at my reflection in the darkened window, asking myself what I could have done differently. Given more? Flashed more? Lied less? No, that wasn't it. I didn't lose Camille because I failed her. I lost her because I never gave her what she secretly wanted: status, applause, proof. And the truth? She never earned mine. I spent the next few weeks in that house like it was a museum. Every room reminded me of what we built and what she burned. I found the tiniest signs, bobby pins behind the couch cushions, lipstick-stained napkins in drawers, the faintest trace of her lotion in the bathroom. I didn't throw them out. I didn't cling to them either. I just noticed them. Like chapters from a book I already knew the ending to. Eventually, I packed a single duffel and locked the door behind me. Not because I had nowhere to go, but because it was time. I didn't take the car. I called a driver. I didn't even check my phone. People would talk. Friends would ask. But none of it mattered. Camille left the house. I was about to return to a kingdom, and she didn't even know it yet. My name is Julian Ward. And if you really want to understand how I got here, you need to understand the woman who raised me. Dr. Eloise Ward. To the world, she's a titan. Founder and CEO of W Global Systems, a $5 billion tech empire that silently powers infrastructure in 31 countries. To me, she's just mom. Which is funny, because growing up, most kids thought I lived with a bodyguard or a private tutor. She was never flashy, never loud, but she could kill a corporate takeover with a 2-sentence email and make it look like a weather report. When Camille left, I didn't call anyone. I didn't rage or drink or spiral. I just drove. For hours. Until my GPS said I was back in the same gated community I hadn't visited in over a year. The guards recognized me instantly. The iron gates opened like they always did, no questions asked. Even though I'd told Camille I didn't have much family, the truth was sitting behind 20-foot glass windows and an emerald lawn that didn't dare grow uneven. Mom opened the door herself. She was barefoot, wearing one of those silk robes that made her look like she ruled ancient dynasties instead of tech boards. She didn't ask what happened. She just stepped aside and let me in. "You're home," she said, walking toward the kitchen. "Coffee." That was it. No drama. No fuss. Just presence. Quiet warmth. The same woman who used to tuck me into bed and whisper quotes from Mandela or Sun Tzu, depending on whether I needed comfort or discipline. The same woman who made me memorize phrases like, "Never give a sword to someone who can't dance." The kind of mother who didn't just raise a son, she raised a strategist. I sat on the marble stool while she stirred our coffee the old-school way. No machine, just a kettle, a French press, and a quiet hand. She slid my mug toward me and met my eyes. "She's gone, isn't she?" I nodded once. That was all it took. Mom sighed, not in disappointment, but in quiet confirmation. "Let her chase noise. You build silence." That line stuck with me, not as a jab at Camille, but as a mission. I hadn't planned on revenge. Not really. I wasn't wired like that. I didn't want her hurt. I just didn't want to be broken. I wanted to remember who I was before I started trying to prove my worth to someone who never looked beyond the packaging. Over the next few days, I stayed in one of the guest rooms. Mom never hovered. She left books on the nightstand, bookmarked chapters, a signed copy of The Art of War on day 2, an internal memo packet from W Global's R&D department on day 5, and on day 6, a simple question at breakfast. "Ready to work?" I didn't hesitate. Yes. W Global didn't need me. That's what made my return even more purposeful. I didn't enter as a prince. I joined one of the shadow divisions under a different name, J. Ellis. No press. No titles. Just a badge and a cubicle in the systems integration wing. My mother made it clear. If you're going to lead anything, you'll build it with your own hands first. So I did. The office was a fortress of glass and stone, 39 floors of pure intention. I showed up every morning in plain clothes. No chauffeur. No inherited privilege. Just grit. I coded. I built. I listened. I earned. And quietly, I rose. No one in my division knew I was her son. That was the rule. My work had to speak louder than my name. The strange thing? It felt good. It felt like freedom. Every time I saw the logo, W Global Systems, I remembered the little girl my mother had once been. The daughter of a seamstress and a welder from Queens. She built this legacy with fire in her bones. And now, it was mine to understand from the ground up. At night, I stayed late, not because I had to, but because something in me had reignited. Not spite, not grief, just purpose. A new kind. One that had nothing to do with Camille or the life we almost built. One that had everything to do with me becoming who I was always meant to be. Weeks turned into months. My projects were noticed. My ideas began driving meetings. I still operated under the alias. But behind closed doors, I joined high-level strategy calls, contributed to platform launches, and helped quietly restructure a failing branch that would later double our earnings projection. And all along, Mom watched, never interfering, only sharpening. One night, she invited me to the rooftop garden. Just the two of us, surrounded by lights and silence. "You could have stayed gone," she said. I nodded. I could have. But you came back. I looked at her. Not for revenge. She smiled. "I know. For vision." And that's when I knew. The pain? The betrayal? It wasn't the end of my story. It was the ignition. Camille never asked to meet my family. Never pressed about holidays. She assumed I was a lone wolf. And I let her assume. Because if she really loved me, it wouldn't have mattered. She made her choice. Now I was making mine. 8 months. That's how long it had been since I heard her voice. 8 months since I smelled her perfume in the sheets, or watched her stir coffee she never finished. 8 months of silence, focus, and growth. And now, here she was. Camille. I saw her before she saw me. That wasn't unusual. She rarely looked twice at people she didn't think she needed something from. But that day, she should have looked. She should have really looked. W Global HQ towered over the city like it always did, sleek, intimidating, humming with quiet power. I just swiped my badge through the glass turnstile on the executive floor when I heard her laugh. A little too loud. A little too practiced. I turned. There she was. Camille stood at the front desk wearing a blazer that probably cost more than most people's rent, heels sharp enough to draw blood, and hairstyled in waves I knew took hours to perfect. She clutched a sleek portfolio in one hand and rested the other lightly on the arm of the man beside her. Ronan Graves. He looked just as smug as the last time I saw him, chiseled jaw, tailored suit, that same hungry gleam in his eyes. The kind of man who thought walking into a room was an accomplishment. His laugh was hollow, just like I remembered, as he leaned on the counter and tried charming the receptionist. "We're here to see the strategy board," he said, sliding over a proposal packet like he owned the place. "Big picture stuff. Global expansion. The kind of opportunity that doesn't knock twice." The receptionist, Tara, didn't reply right away. She glanced at the packet, then up at me, eyes flicking between us like she was watching a plot twist write itself. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed again. I gave her a small nod, just enough to say, "Let it play out." Camille still didn't notice me, not even when I stepped within 10 feet of her. My suit was tailored now, subtle, elegant, expensive without screaming it. My name badge said J. Ward, Executive Board. But she didn't look at names. She looked at price tags. I paused by the elevator, waiting. I could have announced myself. Could have smiled, said hello, even raised a brow. But I didn't. I let her keep pretending she was the star of this show. Ronan leaned over the counter again. "Tell them Ronan Graves is here. I think the name will carry itself." God, I almost laughed. The arrogance. The delusion. The elevator pinged behind me. As I stepped inside, I saw Tara finally press the intercom to alert the boardroom upstairs. Ronan adjusted his cufflinks. Camille turned her head just slightly, and for a moment, her eyes brushed past mine. Nothing. Not a flicker of recognition. I guess I wasn't wearing the right brand. The doors slid shut. Inside the elevator, I didn't smile. Not really. But there was a tightness in my chest that loosened. I'd spent so many nights wondering if she'd regret it. If she'd ever look back. Now I had my answer. She didn't even look forward. On the 33rd floor, the executive boardroom had already begun filling. My mother, seated at the head, gave me a brief nod. Not warmth, not formality, just acknowledgement. She didn't need to say anything. She knew I'd seen them. And I knew she'd already read the proposal they submitted last week. It was weak, overambitious, hollow. But she let the meeting get scheduled anyway, because sometimes the wolves like to come to the door themselves. I took my seat at the table, laid out my notes, and waited. We weren't just going to reject their offer. We were going to expose them, gracefully, publicly, and thoroughly. 5 minutes later, Camille and Ronan were escorted into the room by a junior associate. The atmosphere shifted. The view behind my mother's chair stretched across the skyline, the clouds parting like they'd been staged. She looked up slowly, expression unreadable. Camille still hadn't looked at me. She was too busy scanning the room for leverage, for approval, for power. Ronan puffed up his chest like he was walking onto a stage. "Thank you for seeing us today," he began. "We're excited to discuss how our platform could integrate seamlessly with W Global's existing infrastructure. It's a chance to be." "You're late," my mother said. The words stopped him mid-pitch. I don't think we are," he stammered. She held up her watch. "Time is precision. You're 3 minutes late. But let's not waste 3 more. Camille opened her portfolio. "We've prepared a model that forecasts." "I don't need models," Eloise cut in. "I need integrity." That shut them both up. I didn't speak. Not yet. I watched. I listened. And as the boardroom went quiet, the weight of the moment began to settle around Camille. Her hands trembled slightly as she turned a page. Her eyes flicked across the table, and then finally, they found me. She squinted, almost uncertain, then blinked. I held her gaze without a word. Recognition hadn't come yet, but it would. It was only a matter of time. Camille walked into the boardroom like she belonged there. That was her gift, really, confidence. She could walk into a palace wearing borrowed diamonds and convince the king she owned the vault. But this wasn't a palace. This was W Global. And that day, it wasn't confidence she needed, it was awareness. The kind that might have saved her from what was coming. I stood behind my mother's chair, not as her son, not as a man scorned, but as an architect of the platform Camille and her visionary, boyfriend had come here to exploit. It was poetic. 8 months ago, she walked out of my life with her head high and her suitcase full. Now she stood under my mother's roof, holding a proposal that smelled like desperation masked in buzzwords. The boardroom was silent but alive. Glass walls gleamed, the city skyline behind us glowing under the late morning sun. Camille sat across the table with Ronan beside her. She still hadn't put it together. Her eyes scanned the faces, executives, board members, strategists, but she never lingered on mine. I wasn't Julian, the man she left behind. Not in this room. I was Jay Ward, head of platform infrastructure and shadow systems integration. And today, I was a witness to a reckoning. Dr. Eloise Ward leaned back in her chair, fingers steepled beneath her chin. Her tailored steel gray suit was deliberate, controlled power, calm dominance. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. With a glance, she could dismantle egos. With a word, she could shut down careers. So, she said smoothly, turning a page in the folder she hadn't needed to read. You want to sell us integration software? Ronan smiled like a man who thought he still had cards left to play. Not just software, an ecosystem. A full-stack model that overlays data-rich layers for smart routing logistics, synced through blockchain. Adaptive. Scalable. He said all the right words. In the wrong room. My mother didn't flinch. And you designed this? With Camille, he said, nodding to her. She handles outreach, capital strategy. I handle the tech. Interesting, she said flatly. Because your software borrows core framework from a system W Global launched in beta 3 months ago. A system designed and written by my internal team. I saw it then. The shift in Camille's posture. The way her fingers gripped her pen. Her eyes darted to Ronan, uncertain. He, of course, kept smiling, because arrogance can't read the room until it's on fire. Coincidences happen, he said. Do they? My mother mused. Your proposal references a feature we've only deployed in our South African division. A feature never publicly announced. So tell me, Mr. Graves, where did you learn about it? His smile faltered. Camille's eyes widened just slightly, her lips parting. She turned toward Ronan. Not fully, just enough that I caught the edge of panic settling in. She didn't know. That much was clear. She had no idea he'd been peddling stolen ideas. She was just the pretty pitch woman. Maybe we're getting off on the wrong foot, Camille offered quickly, voice softer now, coaxing. This could be a partnership. We bring fresh energy, you bring scale. Dr. Ward raised one hand. Silence. Let me be clear, she said. You are not walking into this company. You are crawling out of it. Camille's breath caught. Ronan started to speak, but she didn't let him. I fired your father last week, she said calmly. He'd been funneling proprietary data through a third-party cloud channel. We traced the breach. It led back to you. Camille turned to Ronan fully now, horrified. You said. I told you it was clean, he whispered sharply. My mother leaned forward slightly, eyes never leaving them. You came here thinking this would be a merger. It's not. It's a purge. She snapped her fingers once. Security opened the door. Escort these two out. Camille blinked, stunned. Wait, what? You don't have the clearance to be in this building, Eloise said coldly. And as of this moment, you're both barred from every W Global property, platform, and affiliate partnership. Ronan stood up fast, his composure cracking. You can't just. I can, she replied. And I just did. Security stepped forward. One of them placed a hand gently on Camille's elbow. She pulled away, eyes wide now, scanning the room, and finally, they landed on me. She stared. Time stopped. Julian, she whispered. I looked at her and nodded once. Hello, Camille. Her mouth opened, closed. You work here? My mother rose to her feet beside me, brushing a speck of lint off her lapel. No, Camille, she said. He doesn't work here. He builds here. He leads here. He is the architect behind the platform your little partner just tried to steal. Camille stared at me like she was seeing a ghost. My mother's voice was even. You left a king for a con artist. Walk out of this building like the choice was worth it. Security held the door open. Camille didn't move. She looked at me with eyes that suddenly saw every moment she overlooked. Every question she never asked. Every red flag she painted white. And I just stood still. She had her answer. Now she could walk out of something else. There's a difference between silence and satisfaction. I didn't feel satisfaction watching them get escorted out. I felt completion. A moment years in the making that didn't require a word of revenge from my lips. Because reality had spoken for me. The door clicked shut behind them. Camille and Ronan were gone. And my mother, Eloise, turned calmly back to the boardroom, as if we'd just taken out the trash instead of two people who'd tried to rob the table they hoped to eat at. "We'll reconvene in 30 minutes, she said, gathering her notes. Meeting adjourned. Chairs slid back. Quiet murmurs floated in the air. Executives who had witnessed the takedown nodded to one another. No one asked questions. Not yet. They would later. But not now. This moment belonged to something older than boardroom politics. This moment belonged to legacy. I didn't follow Camille and Ronan. I didn't have to. The moment she looked at me and said my name with disbelief was the last thread snapping loose from the illusion she'd lived in. Her entire understanding of me, of us, collapsed in 10 seconds. That look in her eyes, somewhere between horror and heartbreak, told me she understood what she'd lost, what I never needed to flaunt. As I walked back to my office, the staff on the floor avoided eye contact. Not out of fear, out of awe. The whispers started before I even reached the elevator. That was him. Julian Ward's her son? I thought he was just consulting. It didn't matter. The truth was out now. I spent the rest of the afternoon reviewing platform specs and back-end server load tests. Focus. That's what I've always known how to return to. While Camille had chased Flash, I'd chosen Foundation. And when everything came crashing down, only one of us was still standing. Around 6 p.m., I got the call. Mom again. Calm as always. "You should see this," she said. "Turn on BizTech Live. Front page." I pulled up the feed. And there it was. A grainy photo taken from a cell phone. Camille and Ronan being escorted out of W Global headquarters by uniformed security. Her face turned in profile, expression frozen mid-panic. Ronan's jaw clenched, his hands balled into fists. The headline beneath was merciless. Investor power couple ousted from W Global over data breach allegations. The article was short, surgical. It didn't name me. My mother saw to that. But it outlined everything else. The leaked proposal, the tech theft, the suspicious cloud channel traced back to Ronan's family firm. It mentioned that Camille had recently joined the venture as a strategic partner, implying she wasn't innocent, but also not the architect of the fraud. The internet doesn't care about nuance, though. The comments section was already a bloodbath. Graves caught stealing? No wonder his last 3 deals failed. Is this the same Camille from that wedding photo with Julian Ward? Oof. I closed the tab. I didn't need to keep watching. They'd made their choices. The fall was just gravity doing what it does. By the end of the week, more articles surfaced. Investors were pulling out of Ronan's project. One source cited integrity concerns. Another confirmed legal counsel had been retained. Camille's name was tagged in every post. Her face, once polished and envied, became a symbol of how fast the tides could turn. And still, she didn't call. Until she did. It started with a single text. "Camille, can we talk?" I stared at it for a long moment. I didn't reply. 3 hours later, an email. Subject, "I'm sorry." The body was longer than I expected. Apologies. Regrets. Reflections. All the things she should have said a year ago, but now wrapped in the paper-thin sincerity of hindsight. She said she didn't know what Ronan had done. She swore she never meant to hurt me. She admitted she'd been drawn to the wrong kind of success, as if it had lured her like a siren and not something she chased with both arms wide open. I didn't reply to that either. Not because I hated her, but because I finally didn't need her. A week after the article broke, I received an internal memo congratulatory. I'd been unanimously approved for promotion, Executive Director of Technology Innovation. My name, for the first time, was added to the company's public directory. Julian Ward. No alias. No shadow. Just me. Reporters started circling. Business blogs requested interviews. One headline even dared to call me the silent prince of W Global. I declined every interview. Let them speculate. Let them guess. The truth belonged to me, and I had no obligation to share it. What struck me most wasn't the noise. It was the quiet after. No more wondering if Camille had loved me for who I was. No more chasing closure. She had it now, in front of the whole world. And if she thought she'd lost a freelancer with good intentions, she now knew the truth. She left an empire. And the gates behind her? They never opened twice. "Julian," she breathed. Her voice cracked slightly, like her mouth had dried mid-syllable. Like my name didn't fit in her mouth anymore. I turned to face her fully. Not the half glance I'd given her when she walked into the boardroom. This was deliberate. Direct. I let her see every inch of me, not the man she once dressed down with her expectations, but the man who had built something she never bothered to ask about. "Hello, Camille," I said, my voice calm. Measured. She blinked. Twice. Her lips parted, and I saw her throat move as she swallowed. Behind her, security stood still, their presence silent but unyielding. Ronan had already been escorted into the hallway, but Camille, she lingered. She always did cling to the moment she thought she could manipulate. "You work here?" she asked. Before I could respond, my mother rose from her chair. She didn't raise her voice. She never needed to. Her presence alone carried the weight of 5 continents' worth of respect. And when she spoke, her words cut clean through the air. "No, Camille," she said. "He doesn't work here." Camille turned toward her, confused. Hesitant. I could see the flickers of doubt racing through her brain, trying to connect pieces that had been sitting right in front of her for years, waiting to be noticed. "He owns part of it," my mother continued. "Julian is my son. He's the architect behind the global platform we launched last quarter. You know, the one your boyfriend tried to reverse engineer." Camille's eyes swelled. "Your son?" My mother didn't blink. "The same son you never asked about. The one you left for a man with shiny shoes and stolen plans. You thought you married a man with nothing. What you failed to see was that you were standing beside a king before you walked into a pawn shop." I watched the words hit her, one by one. They didn't land like punches. They landed like confessions she should have already known. Camille's hand reached out, instinctively, thoughtlessly, toward mine. "Julian, you lied to me." I met her gaze, steady. "No, I didn't. I told you everything that mattered. You just didn't ask the right questions." She blinked, stunned. "You said your mother was retired," she murmured. "She is," I replied. "From the public, not from power." Her eyes shifted again, as if she was still clinging to some lifeline, some old version of me she could pull back from the ashes. "I didn't know. That was the point," I said. "You were supposed to love me for me, Camille. Not for the logos on my shirt or the zip code of my driveway. I gave you honesty, stability, peace. You called it not enough." Her voice cracked. "I didn't mean." "You didn't have to mean it," I interrupted gently. "You just had to do it. And you did. You walked out." She was crying now, but quietly. Camille never cried loud. Even her breakdowns were curated. "You don't understand," she said. "I was under pressure. Everyone around me had more lifestyle, more everything. I thought if I could just feel that for once." "You had more," I said. "You just didn't recognize it." She looked away, ashamed. "Please." "Please what?" I asked, not unkind. "Please forget. Please reverse time." Her voice lowered to a whisper. "Please don't hate me." And that's when I finally saw it. Not the woman who left me. Not the girl I met in college. But a person staring down the consequences of their own superficial compass. "I don't hate you, Camille," I said softly. "I pity you." She winced like I'd struck her. I hadn't meant it cruelly, but I didn't sugarcoat it either. Truth wasn't cruelty. It was clarity. "Enjoy the view on your way down," I said, stepping aside. "It's a long fall." She didn't reply, just stood there as security gently motioned toward the door again. She walked out slower this time. And this time, I watched her go. For years, I'd wondered what it would feel like if she came back. If she regretted it. If she begged. But now that I stood in that moment, I didn't feel vindicated. I felt still, clear, free. The silence that followed her exit wasn't empty anymore. It was peaceful. I turned to my mother. She gave me a single approving nod and pressed a hand lightly to my shoulder. "You handled it with grace," she said. "Was that grace?" I asked with a small smile. "It was," she replied. "You could have destroyed her. You didn't." "She destroyed herself," I said. "I just didn't stop her." My mother stepped past me, walking toward her office. "We have work to do, Julian. A company to lead." I followed her, the hallway bright ahead of us. And behind me, only footsteps that no longer mattered. It only took 36 hours for the storm to break. The moment Camille and Ronan were escorted out of W Global, a chain reaction began. The building itself hadn't even stopped buzzing before someone snapped a photo, low resolution, slightly angled, but clear enough to identify both of them. Camille's face was turned away, mid-step, caught between confusion and embarrassment. Ronan's face, though, perfect profile, jaw clenched, pride unraveling. The image spread like fire laced with gasoline. By morning, BizTechLive and Tech Investor Watch had both run the story. Within a day, international platforms picked it up. The headlines didn't hold back. Gravesgate, tech sweethearts or corporate parasites? From penthouse to exit hall, the Ronan Graves scandal. W Global security footage sparks questions on Camille Rivers' role. Every major outlet wanted a statement from W Global. My mother, of course, issued a single, clinical response. W Global Systems remains committed to innovation, transparency, and the highest standard of integrity. We do not comment on matters under legal review. Clean. Professional. Deadly. The silence said more than any press conference ever could. Camille and Ronan have been pitching their startup, Echelon Sync, to venture firms for months, using half-developed tech and cherry-picked data to create an illusion of potential. With W Global publicly disassociating and leaking evidence of code theft to legal counsel, investors began to pull out. Slowly at first, then all at once. By the end of the week, Echelon Sync's site was down for maintenance. Their Instagram scrubbed. Ronan locked his Twitter. Camille made hers private. I didn't even have to lift a finger. Karma moved faster than any strategist ever could. And then came the part one didn't expect. The call from W Global's executive committee. Promotion. Not a suggestion. Not an offer. A unanimous vote. I was to be publicly named Executive Director of Technology Innovation. Until that moment, I had remained behind the curtain by design. Working under initials. Avoiding interviews. Building quietly, like I was raised to do. But the board felt the company needed a symbol now, something honest. Something earned. They wanted to reintroduce W Global's integrity with a name the world didn't know they needed. Julian Ward. My mother met me in her office that afternoon. You've earned this, she said simply. I didn't chase it. You didn't have to. The best don't. I stood in front of her floor-to-ceiling window and looked out at the skyline. For so long, I'd avoided the spotlight, not out of fear, but choice. But I also understood timing. And this was it. I accepted the role. The press release went out at noon. By 12:09, my inbox had 184 new messages. Interview requests. Partnership interest. A few long-lost acquaintances suddenly curious about grabbing lunch. One particularly bold tech journalist referred to me as the heir no one saw coming. They weren't wrong. But one message stopped me cold. From Camille Rivers. Subject, please. That was it. Just that one word. I didn't open it right away. I stared at it for almost an hour. Not because I was tempted, but because it was so familiar. That voice, even in text, still knew how to find the one crack in the armor and knock gently. But I didn't let her in. I didn't reply. That night, I went for a walk. No suit. No security detail. Just me and the sound of the city, quieter than usual. I passed a newsstand. My face wasn't on a magazine cover, but the company's was. W Global. Bold letters. The next era of ethical tech. The article mentioned me by name for the first time publicly. There was a strange power in that. Not just because people were finally seeing me, but because I no longer needed to be seen. The next morning, my phone buzzed again. Camille, I didn't know what I had. Camille, I miss you. Camille, please. 3 messages. Stacked like dominoes, timed like a campaign. I could almost hear her rehearsing them in her head, picking the words she thought would land best. But that's the thing about regret. It always arrives after the damage is done, hoping to fix what memory cannot. I didn't block her. I just stopped answering. Because I had moved on to something else now. Not another woman. Not another fantasy. Just a version of myself I'd almost lost in the noise of trying to be enough for someone who had no idea what enough really was. I wasn't angry. That surprised me the most. I thought I'd want her to hurt, to feel the weight of what she tossed away. But all I felt was peace. The kind of peace that doesn't shout. It just stays. Camille didn't fall from grace. She walked away from it. And I never chased her. Now she was chasing me. But I was no longer anywhere she could follow. It was a Thursday night when I saw her again. I wasn't expecting it. I wasn't dressed for confrontation or closure. I wasn't carrying any grand speech rehearsed in the mirror. I was just there for the quiet. A small gallery event tucked away in a refurbished warehouse in downtown. Abstract art. Soft jazz. A small crowd that actually cared about the work instead of posting selfies with it. Alina had invited me. She was one of the curators, sharp, kind, the kind of person who asked questions and actually waited for the answers. We'd been spending time together. Nothing official, nothing rushed. Just presence. She knew what I'd been through and didn't prod. That alone made her rare. I was sipping a glass of wine, standing in front of a canvas that looked like a storm trapped in slow motion, when I felt it. An old presence. Not physical, not loud. Just a shift. Like the air remembered something it hadn't touched in a long time. I turned, and there she was. Camille. She wasn't wearing designer labels this time. No heels, no diamonds, no sharp-edged couture. Just a soft gray dress that fit like an afterthought. Her hair was pulled back, loosely, as if she hadn't spent hours perfecting it. And her eyes, those were different, too. Not painted. Not practiced. Just tired. She saw me before I could look away. I could have stepped into another room. Could have pretended I didn't see her. But I didn't. I stayed exactly where I was. She walked over, slowly. "Hi," she said, voice small. "Hi," I replied. A beat passed. Maybe two. She folded her hands in front of her like a nervous child about to admit to breaking something fragile. "I didn't expect to see you here." "I didn't expect to see you at all," I said honestly. She nodded. "I heard about the promotion. News travels fast. Especially when it involves you," she said, trying for a small smile. I didn't return it. She exhaled. "You look good." "I feel good." Another pause. The music behind us hummed, low, soulful saxophone notes curling through the air like smoke. "I wasn't going to come," she said. "But you did." "I didn't know you'd be here. I've been trying to live differently. Smaller. Quieter." That part, I believed. Her whole presence tonight was a shadow of the woman I used to know, the one who chased image like it was currency. This Camille looked stripped of artifice. "I'm sorry, Julian," she said. I met her eyes. For what? For leaving like I did. For what I said. For what I didn't see. I waited. She continued. "I thought I wanted more. And maybe I did. But I didn't understand what more actually meant. I thought it meant money. Flash. All the things other people were flaunting. But none of them ever made me feel safe. Or calm. Or seen." I stayed silent. Not to punish her. Just to let her speak. Uninterrupted for once. "I've been thinking about the way I measured you. How I made you feel like you weren't enough. And you were. You were more than enough. I just didn't recognize it until I watched it from the outside, after I'd already walked away from it." I studied her. Not the words. The truth in her face. Her voice didn't shake for effect. It cracked from somewhere deeper. "I made a mistake," she whispered. "No," I said. "You made a choice." She looked down. That landed harder than I intended, but it had to be said. A mistake is something you trip into. A choice is something you pack a bag for. "I don't want anything from you," she said quickly. "I know how it looks, and I know what it's going to sound like, but I'm not here to beg for another chance. I just needed to say it out loud. To your face. Not in a text. Not in an email. I owed you that." There was a strange quiet between us. Not tension. Just recognition. I nodded slowly. "Thank you for saying it." She lifted her eyes, surprised. "That's all." "That's enough," I said. She smiled, sad but real. "I've been trying to figure out how to fix what I broke." "You can't," I said gently. "Some things don't get fixed. Some things just get left behind." She nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. She didn't wipe it. "Is it too late?" I didn't answer right away. I looked past her, toward a painting near the far wall. It was a single brush stroke, a bold red slash on pure white canvas. Clean. Clear. Final. "It was too late the day you measured my worth by your standards," I said. "You loved a version of me you thought you could shape. Not the man who already existed." She closed her eyes briefly, then stepped back. "Goodbye, Julian. Goodbye, Camille." And that was it. No dramatic exit. No parting kiss. No flare of unfinished love. Just a woman who finally understood what she walked away from, and a man who no longer needed to explain why he never chased her. The ballroom glowed in silver and sapphire, the official colors of W Global's annual summit. Hundreds of people from every division, branch, and continent gathered beneath one high, curved ceiling. It was the kind of event where legacy wasn't just talked about, it was displayed, lived, reinforced. And for the first time in my life, I walked in without hiding. Julian Ward. My name was printed boldly on the digital guest list. It glowed from the rotating display behind the welcome desk. I saw my name on the stage program, in the sleek event app, even in the quiet murmurs from people I passed. Some recognized me immediately. Some only knew the name, not the face. But by the end of the night, none would forget either. I stood near the edge of the stage, watching the crowd ebb and flow with careful admiration. You could feel it in the air change. Not just of leadership or innovation. Of story. W Global wasn't just evolving. It was being redefined. And somehow, I had become part of that definition. My mother took the stage at precisely 7:45 p.m. as planned. Always precise. Always poised. She didn't need applause to command attention, but she got it anyway, a standing ovation from every corner of the room. She wore black tonight, not because it was formal, but because it was powerful, regal, unapologetically her. "Thank you," she said simply into the mic, her voice smooth, practiced, but never cold. "Tonight, we honor our future." She paused, her gaze sweeping the room. "In this company, we do not only promote achievement, we promote character, grit, integrity. And sometimes, those values live quietly in the background until their impact becomes undeniable." She turned slightly, extending one hand toward me. "And so, it is with deep pride, both as a CEO and as a mother, that I introduce to you W Global's new Vice President of Global Strategy, my son, Julian Ward." The applause was thunderous. I stepped forward slowly, not because I was nervous, but because the moment deserved stillness. Reflection. The last time I stood in a room full of people, my name wasn't worth repeating. I was the man with no last name, no pedigree, no flash. Now, I was the story. And not because of revenge or optics, but because I'd earned it. I took the stage, shook my mother's hand, then turned to the audience. Thousands of faces stared back. Familiar, unfamiliar. Some who had watched me rise. Some who had no idea I existed until a month ago. All of them were waiting to hear what I had to say. I didn't clear my throat. I didn't pause for dramatic effect. I just spoke. "I'm not here to prove anyone wrong," I said. "I'm here to prove those who believed in me right." A quiet settled over the room. My story isn't one of overnight success. It's one of building in silence, working in shadow, and growing in places no one thought to look. I was never interested in applause. I was interested in alignment between what I do and who I am. I saw people nodding, leaning forward, listening not just to the words, but the weight of them. When I started at W Global, I didn't wear a title. I didn't use my last name. I wanted to know what I was worth without the armor. I wanted to build something that didn't need to be explained. I paused, letting that breathe. And when people left, when people doubted, when people tried to measure me by what I appeared to be, I stayed quiet. I stayed focused. I stayed me. More nods now. A few murmured affirmations. And not a single phone was out. Everyone was present. I finished simply. This next chapter isn't just mine. It's ours. For those who've been overlooked, underestimated, unseen, know this. Your silence is not your weakness. It's your strength. And when your time comes, you won't have to shout. The work will speak. Applause again. But this time, it wasn't just loud. It was layered, with respect, with recognition, with something deeper than clapping hands. It was understanding. I stepped down from the podium. My mother met me with a single hand pressed to my back. "Well said," she whispered. "I learned from the best," I replied. The rest of the night passed in a blur of handshakes, photos, congratulations. Executives who once overlooked me now studied me. People who didn't know my name tried hard not to forget it. But through it all, I stayed grounded. I didn't drink more than a single glass of wine. I didn't bask. I didn't brag. Because this wasn't the finish line. This was a door. And as the night wound down and I looked out at the glowing room full of people, I realized I never once thought about Camille. Not because she didn't matter, but because she no longer did. I wake up to sunlight, not an alarm. The kind that leaks in slow and golden through floor-to-ceiling windows, warming the hardwood beneath my bare feet before I even touch it. The city hums outside, but it no longer rushes me. I built this house on a hill just outside the noise. Close enough to see everything. Far enough to hear myself think. It's mine. Every inch of it. Not leased. Not gifted. Not flaunted. Mine. I walk barefoot through the kitchen, coffee already brewing. Thanks to the preset Alina insists on setting every night before bed. She says mornings deserve softness. She's right. She's right about a lot of things, actually. Alina. She came into my life quietly, like a verse I didn't know I needed. No big entrances. No gold-plated promises. She just saw me. Not the name. Not the empire. Just me. The man beneath the narrative. The man who'd been measured and discarded and rebuilt. She meets me by the island. Kisses me like it's routine, but still full of intent. "Meeting today?" she asks, handing me the mug I like best. Dark ceramic, slightly chipped near the handle. "Just one," I say. "New campus pitch in Berlin. Then I'm free." She grins. "Perfect. I want to show you something." I raise a brow. She doesn't elaborate. She never oversells. That's another thing I admire about her. We eat breakfast with the back doors open, the wind curling through the space like a guest. There's no tension, no pretense, just warmth, stability, the kind I used to think was earned only after struggle. But now I know it's also a choice. Later that morning, I drive myself to W Global headquarters. Not because I don't have a driver. I just like the feel of the road beneath my hands. My car is sleek, yes, but not a spectacle. That's the difference between owning power and needing people to see it. The staff greet me like family now. Not because I demand it, but because I've earned it. And there's something else, something new. Respect. Not the polite kind. The real kind. The kind born from watching someone rise without burning anyone to do it. I meet with the team, review rollout plans, finalize a partnership initiative for a sustainability platform in Brazil. Every time I speak, I feel like the boy I used to be, quiet, precise, has finally found his volume. And it's not loud. It's clear. Before I leave the building, I stop by the executive floor. My mother is on a call, but she waves me in. She finishes quickly, then stands and hands me a document. What's this? I ask. A foundation, she says. I scan the first page. The Thomas Ward Scholarship Initiative. My father's name. I glance up. You hated him, I murmur. I hated what he became, she says. But he gave me you. And he gave me reason. It's time something good bore his name. I nod slowly. We've come a long way. My mother and I. There was a time when she was steel and I was glass, always bracing for a crack. But now, we move like gears in sync. Legacy doesn't have to be loud. It just has to be lasting. That afternoon, Alina drives us north. We end up at a plot of land overlooking a wide open field with nothing but sky on the other side. This is what I wanted to show you, she says, her hands in her jacket pockets. What is it? Our future, she says simply. I bought it. Thought maybe we'd build something together. Something no one else has ever lived in. Just us. I look at her, long and full. And I realize, in that moment, this woman isn't trying to replace anything. She's just ready to build something new with me. Not for my name. Not for my past. For who I've become. I'd like that, I tell her. She smiles like she already knew I'd say yes. That night, while she sleeps beside me, I scroll through my old email. There's another message from Camille. Subject, just one conversation. Please. I don't open it. I don't delete it either. I let it sit. Not out of spite. Not even out of pride. Out of peace. Because the thing about healing is, it doesn't always need closure from the one who hurt you. Sometimes the real ending isn't a confrontation. It's silence. It's choosing not to carry what once broke you. It's walking through your own front door, greeted by laughter and love and a life you built with your bare hands, and realizing nothing she could say now would change a thing. She made her choice. And I made mine. Now I wake up not needing to be seen, because I've already seen myself. And I like what I built.